Good morning, everyone. First session of the day. So there are quite a few early birds here. So welcome to all of you here in the room, and of course to all the early birds somewhere there in the virtual world, in the virtual sky. So a very warm welcome to this session, which I think, well, I'm a bit biased, but I do think it's going to be very interesting because it deals with a topic which is a core challenge for SMEs these days. And so we'll be touching on all the different aspects of the shortages of skills and what it does with SMEs, and of course we'll discuss the policy responses. My name is Ludger Unter. I'm working with DG Grow, the SME unit. I'm head of the team that does the so-called SME Performance Review. Essentially what I and my team are doing is basically crunching numbers, writing reports, all sorts of economic analysis on SMEs. And what I'm presenting today is part of that work, this called Eurobarometer. I'll say a little bit more what this entails just in a second. A business survey about this issue of SMEs and skill shortages. Just if you haven't noticed, I'm in fact two people, here, because I'm a presenter, but at the same time I will be also the moderator of the session, because Uti Slotboom, our director, has to replace another colleague. So I think, this is actually a good way to start this session about skill shortages, because this is literally the embodiment of skill shortages. So, and you will see later in the results, what I'm doing now is what a lot of SMEs are actually doing when to deal with this challenge of not getting enough people to do the work. So it's always good to start with a concrete example. So here I am. Right now I'm the moderator. In a second I will switch to being panelist, but same person. Anyway, so this session, as I said, is about skill shortages, and why usually in past years we use this session of economic analysis to publish our broader analysis of the state of SMEs. We also have a report, but that comes out in summer. We decided this year to focus on a specific topic, on skill shortages. And why? Well, there are two, I think, very good reasons for this. One is, you probably heard that this is the European Years of Skills. So the 2023 is really dedicated by the European Commission and the European institutions to focus on this very, very key issue of skills, training people, skilling employees, but also employers and entrepreneurs. That's reason number one. Reason number two is, I'm coming back to the Eurobarometer. So we just yesterday published these results of this Eurobarometer. So what is a Eurobarometer? For those who are not that familiar with this EU language, a Eurobarometer is a business survey that the European Commission conducts for various purposes. It's a huge survey. For this one, we surveyed more than 14,000 firms from all member states, and also some non-member states, just to have comparative results. So the survey was really dedicated to know, okay, what's going on? So how severe is the problem? Where do SMEs, which type of SMEs do lack which kind of skills? What are the impacts of that? And of course, what is their response to policies, and how do they perceive the policies? So after I present this introduction, I will quickly run through the main results of this survey. but then I can't possibly in this session present everything, but the good news is you will find the complete analysis online in the app, but also of course on the Commission website. So the presentation then will be the basis for the policy discussion we're going to have here with an esteemed panel. We're lucky here to have really three brilliant colleagues from different institutions that will look at the issue of skilled shortages from different angles. So I will now briefly introduce the panel. First off, we have Stephanie Kage here, who is the Deputy Head of Division in the German Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Change. Stephanie will present, let's say, the German angle to it. You know, Germany is in a way a veteran country when it comes to skill shortages. So I think there's a lot of experience there. Also for other countries who only now later joined the club that experience this problem. And she will also in particular link this issue with the issue also of entrepreneurs and particular women entrepreneurs, because there's a nexus. We'll come to this in a second. The next person I'd like to introduce is Christina Moisi from the Lisbon Council. The Lisbon Council in particular focus on the transition that the EU has set out as the main policy project, digital transition and environmental transition, and of course this cannot happen without SMEs. So the Lisbon Council provides as a think tank, very valuable input and analysis of where SMEs stand in terms of this transitioning and skills, and Christina will explain to us in a moment the skills or the lack thereof will play is of course a key factor in how this transitioning also of SMEs happening. Last but not least, we have Giacomo Fersini here from Eurocommerce, who just yesterday had a big event in
Eurochambers.
Sorry?
Eurochambers.
Oh, Eurochambers. Sorry. Scratch that from the Eurochambers. That's right. Yeah, you came just yesterday, I think, from Brussels. You had a big event, the Parliament of Entrepreneurs there, a very important event. You also last week published a report, the economic survey, Eurochamber economic, the economic survey, which is taking a broader picture of where SMEs are in Europe, what are the main focus. So you will be in a position to put the question of skill shortages in a broader context. So I think I rounded out the presentation of this panel. You see a lot of interesting angles. The way this now works, I will kick off a first set of presentations, 5 to 7 minutes each. Then afterwards, I slip back into my moderator role, and I will ask each of all of the colleagues here a question, and then next off, I will be. The floor is open to the colleagues here in the room, but also online to ask questions. I have to hurry up, I see. So I'm going. Now I'm no longer moderator, now I'm a presenter, and if you can pull up the first presentation, I think it's there, I guess. Oh, okay, great, super, okay, right, okay. Let me give a very quick overview of what the findings were. And one thing I'd like to start with is keep in mind, when we're talking about skill shortages now, we're talking about companies identifying skill shortages as a major problem in an economic crisis. In many countries we have a recession, in others not, just not. So this is unheard. I think in previous crises, skill shortages, recession was always associated with mass unemployment and so on. Now, still, even in a crisis, companies do not find the people to get the job done. Keep that in mind when you see the results. So first thing is, as I said, if you ask firms what are the biggest problems, well, more than half say they have difficulties in finding employees with the right skills. It's far beyond other also important issues like limited demand for their services or limited access to foreign markets. It's really the number one issue. Next off, when we ask firms, do you find it difficult or not to find staff? So pretty much 6 in 10 SMEs said yes, it's difficult or even very difficult to find the right people. There's only 11% said no, there's no problem at all. We have, it's all great. We find the people that we need. Then what's the job profiles that companies are looking for? It's quite interesting here. It's in particular technicians, meaning people with some technical background, and that can be a lot often related to vocational training. So it's mechanics, lab workers, and so on. If you look at it, IT experts, much talked about, is also like 18%. There's also quite some demand, but in a way less than you expect. But I think in each category you see here, technicians and customer care expert, I think companies expect also people not just to have digital skills. I mean, as a car mechanic today, you also have to have digital skills, because a car these days is a computer with 4 wheels attached. So it's but it's really that area where companies lack people sort of with technical skills. And so obviously when you ask them, what is the reason? Why can't you find the right people? Most often they say, well, there are people, but they don't have the right skills. So there's a question here of mismatch of qualifications. It's also very important, and probably that problem will increase as we go. The skill shortage deepens. It's the inability of smaller firms compete with larger firms in offering payment conditions and other conditions. So that is also, I think, an interesting aspect to it. So firms do not find people, the right skilled people. What happens? What are the impacts? Almost 50% say, well, that means the people we have to work more. They have to do jobs, two jobs at the same time. Slightly a bit what I'm doing now, but I don't want to overplay this. This is probably, there are more serious issues, I think, in a lot of firms. But this is the number one thing. The people there's way more pressure on the existing employees to do basically the job of colleagues that cannot, or the absent colleagues, so to speak. And the other is loss of business. You don't have enough people to work, so you're producing less, you're selling less. So that means the company is, profitability of the company is affected by it. But also, of course, in the general economic terms, that means overall probably less depressing of GDP. Of course, we come from a European angle, approach this, and so we also ask, okay, you don't find people in your own backyard, in your local region, but have you tried to recruit people from across the EU? And that's interesting, and that about 1 in 7 say, well, we tried that. It's actually even more companies that said, well, we tried to get somebody from outside the EU. So that's fairly limited. It's very varies quite among the EU, among member states, because in Luxembourg, for instance, it's 50% of SMEs that hire somebody from elsewhere. So, so maybe there's some potential here still, and we can have this, and we can discuss this in a debate. Maybe if there's more potential here to unlock the potential of the EU labor market as a whole for SMEs. When we ask what are the problems hiring people from elsewhere, 50% said, no, within the EU, 50%, no, it's okay. There are no real problems. The other 50% said, if there are problems, language problem was clearly number one. And then the other issue which came up as a second aspect was bureaucratic difficulties in your country. That means in the country where the SME is located and where they try to recruit somebody else. So that I think is, those two things stood out. Of course, then there's a general problem of not finding suitable candidates in general. Now, we turn to the last bit. That is the policy angle. We asked firms, did you get, policy support, or what type of policy support would you like, do you think is most effective? And so you can see probably on the screens here the list. There's no big surprise here. It's fiscal incentives, and it's also training for upskilling is something where 1 in 3 more or less asked that they think that would be sufficient. Meaning, I think this is all about help in training the people they have already in adjusting to filling probably then positions they cannot find people otherwise from outside. And what they get is, of course, mostly already is direct support in terms of externally funded training programs. So also, it's a wide array of support. There's nothing really stands out. There's a wide range of policy support that firms get, and most of them, that's a positive note. Still, 70% say, well, the support that we get in finding qualified people is really, is somewhat effective. 7 in 10 say that. So that's not too bad, but again, that also leaves some potential to improve. Bureaucracies comes up more frequently when asked if there are problems getting support for skills. That is very often mentioned. The question insufficient size, meaning there's not enough resources, that is not mentioned, but of course in recent years there have been massive programs on the national level and EU level to provide support. Concluding, I'm running over time, sorry, that's a problem here with having 2 hats on. Before going to the panelists, just very quickly, so the skill shortage is already, we are not, if not in a recession, bordering a recession. And skill shortage is mentioned as the biggest problem. Just imagine if we are getting out of recession, what happens then? It gets even worse. Add to this the demographic change, that doesn't get better. And of course, the aspect that we might deepen in the policy discussion of, we are trying to reshore industries in Europe, where, the same, in particular, the skills are needed that are most sought after now, technicians, to get semiconductor industries back in batteries. So there is a big challenge here. And I think there's no, in my view, there's no silver bullet to discuss this. I think it's quite timely that or quite fittingly that we have people here from different institutions here, because probably only a set of individual measures and improvements on the EU level, on the national level, business associations, and of course research come in, can help to overcome this. With this, I'm putting down my 2 hats for the time being, and I invite the first panelist on, Stefanie Kage, to present the German perspective. So, Stefanie, please.
Thank you. Well, for Germany, I can confirm the findings of the Eurobarometer study. When we ask enterprises, they indeed say that the shortage of skilled labor is the topic number 1. 44% have skills shortages and are worried about the demographic trend. And this is not new, unfortunately. It has been like this in 2021 and 2022 when we asked enterprises. And it's mainly young enterprises and those who have older employees who are worried. In concrete terms, there was a study published last week which estimated that 285,000 skilled persons in STEM occupations are missing. And this is very worrisome news for us as a government because we need these skilled people for the transformation. But if we look at projections on concrete professions, we see that we can influence the situation. And we see gains in all different levels of skills. We saw in last years an increase of 46% in software development experts on the master level of a university level, but also 20% increase in childcare on a level of vocational training. We do need more, but we can see that the system that is in place can produce positive effects. On the other hand, in reaction to structural change, we also see in other areas big falling numbers, like even in banking or metallurgy or software application specialists. They fell by, the number of software application specialists fell by 71% since 2021. So when Ludger asked us to come in here and so nicely said that Germany is a veteran in skills shortages, I thought maybe we were not the right government to be presenting here, but looking at the problems we had before, the focus is changing. And in a way, we see the system that we have put in place to train young people for our apprenticeship system can be used also for upskilling and also to train refugees, to train migrants, and we want to base ourselves on that and reinforce here and there according to the needs of the time. So the problem is not only that we are lacking skilled people people with right skills in certain regions and professions. In a way, it is worse. We do have the infrastructure to skill them for the transformation, but sometimes we cannot start upskilling for two reasons. First, we do have an insufficient number of persons or candidates, applicants when we need them. And second, the enterprises tell us that many persons applying for jobs are lacking basic knowledge. So they have to start training them in basic calculus instead of the required skills in technical occupations. So what are our starting points for action as a government? They are in a broad range, and there are 5 starting points. The first one, which is very important, is matchmaking. In addition to the public employment services, we support the services provided by the business associations because they know the enterprises best. They really know what they need, and if they see a candidate, they can assess better than the public employment service whether they have a fit. Second, mobilization of certain groups. We have an insufficient number of candidates, as I said, and so we are trying to mobilize older persons. There we have to look at the framework conditions. We want to mobilize more women, because in Germany, women are mostly working part-time, and if we want them to work longer hours, we have to provide more childcare and other things. Third, school dropouts. These are really difficult to find because they are somehow out of the system, and but we want to activate them more. And finally, migrants, refugees. For the mobilization, we're looking at framework conditions and ways to address and reach them directly. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Third, after mobilization and matchmaking, we provide support, direct support for vocation and training and education to companies, as well as upskilling and lifelong learning. We have knowledge hubs, consulting, regional training centers, and financial incentives. Fourth, we support certain regions and areas where participants are particularly affected, where the enterprises are particularly affected by structural change. And fifth, we address framework conditions ranging from the reduction of red tape, this is particularly true also for migrants, and to the improvement of basic education, so that enterprises can start skilling with the needed skills. And we also provide consulting on attractive working conditions. This is one thing we saw in the pandemic, and I guess it's true in many other countries. Restaurants and hotels lost a lot of staff during the pandemic, and these people never came back. As you see, we are using the complete toolbox and for employees. And as Ludger already mentioned, we also look at entrepreneurs. We think that there is a certain shortage. We need them for taking over enterprises from older entrepreneurs. And we also want to have more female entrepreneurs. This is why we set up a special program. It's an action plan which was published in May. And there we work together with a broad range of stakeholders from business associations, women networks, financing and academia, plus different ministries of the federal government. And we put together over 40 measures which are aiming at making entrepreneurship for women an attractive career option. So there are 4 aims. One is the appreciation for female entrepreneurs and giving them a voice. Second, supportive financing, because they are really not getting as much financing as men. And third, we try to improve their working conditions, especially the compatibility of self-employment and work, family care work. And fourth, we try to also increase their interest in STEM and crafts. So maybe I will leave it like this. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. And then, without much further ado, I'd like to ask Christian Moise to come to the podium to give the link between the twin transition and skill shortages. And as Christina will explain, it has quite an impact on the two. So, Christina,
thank you very much, Ludger.
You have the floor.
Good morning. I'm going to present actually the second results and update of the report that we presented last year in Prague. It's a complex index looking at from the perspective of twin transition. And we added also the competitiveness angle, because the transition is good, but if it doesn't reflect in the competitiveness of the SMEs, it's a bit more difficult to understand. So the index itself, it's this one. The index itself is composed of around 22 sub-indicators grouped in 9 indicators and 3 pillars. The pillars looks at green transition, at digital transition, and competitiveness. We use the public available data. So as we always know, the data have certain gaps, but we kind of try to deal with what is available. This year result looks a bit similar in the top ranking with the last year, with some small changes. So from overall perspective, Sweden is one of the best performer, followed this year by Denmark, which gained 1 place compared to the last year, and Netherlands, which lost in front of Denmark. On the other side of the ranking, we can see that there is no change compared to last year, so the last 4 countries are the same: Latvia, Cyprus, Bulgaria, and Romania, which kind of raises a lot of concerns. In this year analysis, we try to look a bit of a more longer terms to understand if some of the evolution are just through the perspective of the latest events. We had the COVID and now we have the economic crisis. But overall, apart from the SME digitalization and the digital transition in general, which fares slightly better, there is kind of a stagnation across the other 2 pillars, both in green transition and in the competitiveness. One caveat is to say that in the competitiveness area, the data are still reflecting 2020, so probably some additional changes we might see in the next year edition. But as this is the years of digital skills, and we will try to focus on the digital skills, we see that in our index through the perspective of how well the digital skills are used, deployed, and developed in the SME sector. So we try to understand that to the perspective of 3 indicators. One is the shares of SMEs that employ ICT specialists. One is the shares of SMEs that have their ICT functions performed inside, like by own employees. And the last one is the share of SMEs that provide digital skills for development and upskilling of their personnel employees. The results this year look nice, similar to the last year. The first 2 countries don't change places, so Finland and Denmark remain the leaders. Malta improved compared to last year 1 place, while Belgium lost. When it comes to the bottom of the rank, the situation is kind of worrying. So, trying to understand what happens across all the sub-indicators, we see that there are countries in the bottom of the rankings that are almost present all over across these 3 indicators, with some exceptions. If we look at the ICT specialists, Denmark shows a very good positioning, followed by Malta and Belgium. But when we look at the bottom, we find Spain, Italy, and of course Romania, which for me is not necessarily a surprise. Moving to the ICT in-house, so how many of the SMEs deal with the ICT functions inside their own enterprise. We have Finland, Latvia, and Sweden on the top rankings, but again, we have Greece, Bulgaria, and surprisingly, Italy in the bottom rankings. So it's a bit more like in the training side, it's slightly different. We have the Nordic countries actually leading, Finland, Sweden, and Denmark. I don't see the bottom. And I would like to say that in the bottom, it's not surprising, but it's Lithuania, Bulgaria, and again, Romania. So out of the 3 sub-indicators, we have Italy on the bottom rankings in 2 of them, like ICT specialist and ICT in-house, and Romania in another, which are 2 separate. It's surprising from Italy, but let's say not that surprising. When we look across the time series, we will notice that we have certain countries that improve quite significant. Like Poland has 60% improved compared to 2015 in 2020, but at the same time, they start from a very low point. It's 7%, so it is a very fast improvement, but it still has a lot of things to do when it comes to ICT specialists. On the other side, we have countries like Bulgaria, Greece, and Spain, which show decline, which for Spain is it has the highest decline, a 6% decline from 2015 to 2020. So it's a bit of like a very worrisome trend if we look over time. Similar cases with different actors. It's in the ICT in-house. We have Latvia, who is improving fast, but as I said, they start for relatively low level. We have Czech Republic and also Cyprus in the top improver, but at the same time we have Lithuania, Ireland, and Bulgaria that kind of lost track and start declining. The Ireland, actually, it's quite a surprise, because we know that the Irish economy is quite SME, quite digital intensive. But when it comes to SMEs, it seems that they still have this kind of issue of dealing with ICT in-house. And the last sub-indicator was ICT training, where the trainings, we can see Poland that improves fast. Also, Romania shows an improvement in ICT training, but if we consider that they start from 4.9%, yeah, that speed still doesn't help them improve faster. And Netherlands, it's another one that improves in the training side. Ireland instead has a decline in trainings, which is surprising. And we have also the other two countries which doesn't help in the overall. What we can take away from the report, we didn't look only on the digital part. We focused here in the presentation on the digital, especially to the relevance of the digital in both green transition and especially digital transition. So overall, we don't look at particular points of achievements in certain areas, but more on a better performance overall. And what we concluded is that every country has areas where it has to improve, even the one that they are leading the boards. When it comes to EU average, Europe kind of runs on place, not losing position, but not gaining anything either. The digital transition in this year report seems a bit the positive and the highlight side, but mainly from the SME digitalization. So we can see from the perspective that SMEs start adopting the digital tools, big data analytics, cloud computing, but when it comes to skills, it still remains a sore spot for many countries. So that's an area where the performance remains rather stagnating and not changing, at least at EU average, but this can be seen also in a lot of other countries. We have the reports, it's published. We also have the web page, which is active. So thank you very much for your attention, and feel free to ask questions later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. That was, a very fascinating, very detailed overview. Also concerning, in particular, not the specific ranking, but that some countries it's actually going down, and it actually ties nicely in with the results in our Eurobarometer, which says that already now 70% of the firms say they lack of skills slows down their digital transition. So that it's not 17% is already something. It's probably, if that trend continues, it doesn't get better. But anyway, I'd like now to introduce the last speaker to the podium, who will give us a bit sort of an overview of where, again, the skill shortage problem is sort of situated in the overall situation and the challenges that SMEs face now. Giacomo Fersini is here, and then afterwards I'll open the floor for discussion. Giacomo, please, go ahead. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. As already Ludger said, the economic survey that Eurochambers published last week on 9th of November is a huge piece of policy evidence. My name is Giacomo Fersini. I'm the economic policy advisor at Eurochambers, and I've been in charge of this exercise for the last 3 years. Just to give you a very broad overview of the survey itself, we reached the 31st consecutive annual edition, and we surveyed more than 43,000 businesses across Europe. I was surprised when Ludger mentioned that the EU barometer also reached over 40,000 replies, which gives us a bit of competition on which one is the most representative survey at the European level. However, I also included a QR code in case some of you are interested in accessing the full report. And going deep into the main challenges of next year, companies expect that access to energy and raw materials will be the main challenge that they will face. This is probably due to the high energy costs and which are still significantly higher than the last year, and also from the pre-crisis levels, I would say. The second challenge is labor cost, and skills shortages is the third one. And these two challenges have been among the top 3 for the last 3 years in a row, which also indicate how persistent they are. The labor cost is indeed a result of the high inflation environment and the adjustment of wages, which by nature they adapt slowly compared to the inflation impact. And the results are also confirmed by some forecasts of the European Central Bank, according to which the wages will increase in the coming 12 months in 2024. And however, we see a bit of a problem with the potential rise of a wage price spiral across Europe. The third challenge, as I mentioned, is lack of skilled workers, and this is very linked to the previous one because of the increase of the cost that companies have to face in order to professionally train their workers and also to invest in their education. Lack of skilled workers, as I said, is the third in the ranking. And we see the need to incentivize the mobility of skills across the single market. And among the reasons why we have these results, of course, there is also the demographic change in Europe, which is affecting the capacity of companies to attract skilled workers. This is also very important to put into the perspective of the twin transition, which is also adding further pressure to the impossibility of companies to actually embark in such a process without fully relying on skilled workers. SMEs are particularly exposed to this challenge because of their difficulties in accessing networks to find skilled workers, but also they have lack of human resources and strategies to identify what are the skills gaps and what is needed to retain and to attract the skilled workers. The fourth in the ranking is the regulatory burden, and I was also surprised by the results of the Eurobarometer, which also confirms that the administrative burden in general, they are significantly impacting the capacity of companies to attract workers. The second part of the survey was structured around 5 economic indicators, and we asked our entrepreneurs whether they would expect an increase, a decrease, or constant level for next year in the 5 indicators that you see on the display. I will focus mostly on the last 2, employment and business confidence. The first 3, as you can see, the expectations are overall negative, but better than last year. However, we see a lot of uncertainty, and of course, this is the weak domestic demand with the high consumer prices and the low domestic spending are impacting the capacity of companies to sell domestically, and also the impact of high inflation, the Russian invasion of Ukraine. They're also hampering the capacity of companies to export, and also they're holding back investment. When it comes to employment, however, we see that there is a decrease in employment rather than an increase, and it is also corroborated by some other results of the central bank. The European Central Bank forecast, which they also foresee a rise in employment in the Eurozone for 2024. In this sense, the private sector bears a sizable portion of the cost of upskilling and reskilling of the workforce, and this is why financial support should be provided to companies and business organizations. Lastly, I wanted to spend a second on the business confidence level. Last year, our survey registered a historic low. In our previous 30 editions, we never registered such a low level for business confidence. But however, for next year, we see that there is an increase in the confidence, which is still, however, very low. Definitely not what is needed to thrive in the twin transition and in trying to remain competitive at the European level. Lastly, we propose a set of policy recommendations, and however, I would like to focus a bit more on the one to develop and attract talent and skills and drive the twin transition. We see that there is a need to develop more reactive and agile skill policies that reflect the actual needs of the labor market. I would like to stress 3 main points, which are basically pretty much in line with what the other speakers already said. It's important to attract talents from third countries. It's important to improve the recognition of qualifications. And it's also crucial to develop a modernized vocational education and training. Chambers of Commerce have been actively supporting companies in providing them with information, skills, intelligence on forecasting, and provide them also with access to financial opportunities which are also offered at the European level. So the questions for everyone in this room should be not only how we close this skills mismatch, but also how we can put this into the perspective of the broader industrial strategy that the European Union is pushing for, and also how we make sure that this is in line with the topic of competitiveness of the European economy. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Giacomo. And I think, given that we have, taken some more time given for the presentation, I think I go directly now to you, the audience, and of course, whoever is out there in the virtual world, and for your questions. So if you have a question, please raise your hand, or I think Karen will signal to me if there's an online question. If there's nobody to ask a question, but okay, but south of this, there are already quite a few, then I would, of course, also have some. So, there was the lady in the back there. Yes, please.
Yes, hello, good morning. I would have a question to Christina on the digital skills.
Excuse me, can you identify yourself?
Yes, sorry. So Margaret Ruski from the German Confederation of Crafts and Small Businesses. And I would like to have a question for Christina. I found it very interesting, the overview you gave about the different countries. And especially when it comes to Romania, I think it can be quite contradictory, because everyone who's been to Romania knows that their internet speed is enormous. It's really very, very fast compared to Belgium, where I live. I think they have a lot of ICT graduates. And as far as I know, in Brussels, the whole software developers working for the Commission, doing the systems for the Commission, are all Romanians, Greek people and Polish people. So this is somehow in contradiction with the figures that you showed. Do you know what the reasons for that could be? So on the one hand, very high speed internet, very high degree of graduates from those countries, a high level of expertise when it comes to AI, to software development. On the other hand, a low degree of ICT skills in SMEs. Thank you.
Very good question. Christina?
Okay, this will be an answer from my own perspective and a bit of my experience. Most of the cases is that those graduates that you mentioned either opt to work on big companies where the payment is better compared to an SME, let's say, at least in Romania, or they decide to leave the country. So that's why you find them in the European Commission, unfortunately, and not in my own country, in Romania. So it's a bit more like, it's a tricky question, because yeah, I was surprised when I moved, because as you said, the internet, it's quite fast, and so, but I can see also the economic perspective. Any person wants what's better for him, so her, so they tend to go for the best offer. And often this either comes from the big companies like Oracle, Microsoft, and you can find centers there working on this area, or they switch to other countries. So I think that's one of the difficulties that SMEs are struggling, at least in Romania, is like attracting skilled people because of, on one side, financial incentives, but probably also every person wants to develop differently. So I think this is my perspective. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Christina. Looks like the Commission is also partially at fault in creating skill shortages in Romania.
No,
so
I'm not blaming.
I think there was, yes, the lady there, please.
Thank you very much. Christa Schwenk, Austrian Federal Economic Chamber, and here for the European Economic and Social Committee. When listening to you all, I ask myself whether we are really talking about a lack of skilled workforce, or aren't we facing more or less a demographic crisis that's coming up? Knowing that in the next few years, all the baby boomers will take their pension. And my question is, how do we cope with that? And for the time being, I know that's not a quick fix, and I know that there are no easy solutions, but I think thinking more in this long-term perspective and not talking only about today would be really something important. And one thing that I think we need to talk about is the way how we attract foreign brains, but not only foreign brains, but foreign workers, because our lack of skilled workforce will be a lack of workers in total. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Very good point. This was addressed in a way to all of us. Arbitrarily, maybe I ask Stephanie to say something, maybe from the German perspective.
Yes, thank you. I think you really have to think in the long-term perspective, but the problems are also very immediate problems because the enterprises are telling us more and more that they just cannot find suitable candidates, and that they cannot deliver and produce because of this lack of skills. We have just passed the National Skilled Worker Immigration Act this year, and which opens up fresh avenues, and it allows more skilled workers to enter without the need for formal recognition. And lowers the salary threshold for the EU Blue Card and introduces a new point-based job search opportunity card, always considering that we have this infrastructure in place where we can then take the workers and skill them to the needs of the market.
Thank you. Yes.
Ludka,
please.
If I may intervene also, it's me, Giacomo, on your side.
Sorry. Oh yeah, of course, yes.
If I may also just quickly react to the questions. Indeed, indeed, is a long-term challenge that we see, and the improvement of the legal pathways is indeed one of the partial solutions, I would say, to the issue. We see also that we understand that there is a challenge for national systems, for the pension system to take into account what is going to be the main challenge for the next 10, 20 years. One interesting point is also that I wanted to stress is that just yesterday during the European Parliament of Enterprises, a major event organized by Eurochambers, we asked over 700 entrepreneurs what is the condition in terms of lack of skilled workers, and whether these entrepreneurs faced more challenges 5 years ago compared to today in finding new skilled workers. The results of the voting that we received was actually that now it's more difficult than 5 years ago to find skilled workers, and we see this trend that will only continue to be deeper, to become deeper, because of the new technologies, because of the impact of AI, the virtual reality world. So we see that there is a need at right now to tackle the issue. So it's twofold. You have the short-term perspective and also the long-term.
And for the long term, we already go into schools and even kindergarten and try to attract the interest of kids for technical occupations.
Thank you. Very, very good point. I think we have time for one more question. There's a hand up there, please.
Johann Stiegler from German Business Association, UMU, based in Germany. And my question goes to Mrs. Kage. You talked about you're trying to mobilize, or we have to mobilize women who work part-time. I just want to mention a finding we have at our organization. I don't know if this is representative or not. We employ mostly women, and if they don't need to work full-time, they don't want to work full-time. Even if they don't have children, even if there is nobody to care for, they simply don't want to. So we try to motivate them to work full-time, but they say, I don't need to work full-time. I will not work full-time. So I don't know if if this is representative or not, and if it is, are there ways to motivate them to work more time?
I don't know, but if they don't want to and they feel they don't have a need to, then I guess there's no way for the government to make them work more. But we see that it's the main reason why young women don't become entrepreneurs is because there's a lack of childcare. So, we think that we really have a lot to do there to open up avenues and give them the opportunity to, if they want.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I think on the last question we could spend another hour probably, probably for the next SME assembly. I think we have to stop here. Thanks a lot, first of all, for the panelists, for their great contributions and insights. Thanks for your questions here and for your patience here, also to the online audience. Of course, we are all around. If you have any further questions, you can approach us after the session. And I said the material is outside. It remains just one line to add to find us. I think if this session has showed anything, this is a big problem which will be only becoming bigger. And it's one way, it's not one silver bullet. The German examples show you have to approach it from a lot of different angles. And so this problem is here to stay, but I think we also showed that there are some silver linings, there's something you can do about, but this needs to be continued discussion. Anyway, thank you for your patience and have a great assembly. Thank you very much. Thank you.